All right, thanks everyone for joining us on Revit Radio. It looks like a few names we've seen, a few new ones that are, obviously new to us. So for those of you who haven't been here before, as Brian says when he does civil chat, this is all about you guys. If you don't ask questions, then you get to listen to Brian and I talk. And we just did that on civil chat for the previous hour. So we might be running out of things to talk. Yeah, I don't think we'd ever do that.
Yeah,
so,
no.
Anyway, if you do have questions, do type those in the question and answer pod, please. And we'll jump into those sometimes in the order they come in, but you guys don't know. So we'll just choose when we want to do them. And the other thing is we obviously have the chat enabled so you guys can heckle us, give us crap, correct us when we give wrong answers, etc. So Q&A for heckling, or excuse me, Q&A for giving questions, and the chat pod for giving us all our heckling. So that's kind of the big thing. Just, ask the questions, or if you have a better tip than what I'm saying, correct me. We're all good with that. So with that, we're, usually like to jump ahead and do a couple things before we get going too much on this. And there's one thing that I'm going to go ahead and jump in and do, and this is not like it's a huge thing for me, or this is like, mind breaking or anything, but I go into a lot of clients' files, and I do know that everybody's got in their little, their Revit template, they've got their little startup page. Some people's are drafting views. Personally, myself, it's a sheet. Part of the reason why I have mine as a sheet is I have in here a little revision schedule. So my little block here, this is a title block. And the only reason this is a title block is so I can pre-build in all the revisions. So as I go through and create revisions in a project, I just hit the revisions on sheet, check all the little buttons so I can see, oh, cool, let me see which revision is actually posted. What files does this contain? So I wanted to get off on that. And then the other thing that I do, and this is probably fairly recent to me, like within the last couple of years. So I don't know if you consider a couple of years recent. You might all be new to Revit in the last couple of years, so that wouldn't be recent. But I have added a whole bunch of schedules. So the other reason that this is a title block is I can drag and put schedules on here. Obviously, wouldn't be able to do this to drafting view, etc. And there's a couple of things in here. I have schedules that are just going to start showing me all the Revit links. So a lot of this, and somebody saw this in my template and started asking me questions. Well, how do you get all these on there? Like, how do you know what Revit link is there? What's going on? If I grab the schedule and I just go edit the schedule, what you're going to see here is this schedule. When I go into the Fields tab, it's a multi-category schedule. And then once I say it's a multi-category schedule, I can just come down and choose the fields, multiple categories, available fields. I lost the, include elements and links, but I need to choose, where's the drop down for, up here, sorry, right there. So it's a multi-category schedule. And then I just came down here and said, hey, I want to schedule thing from the Revit links. And then all I did was the Revit link file name and the Revit name. It technically is scheduling every single dang thing in the model because it's a multi-category schedule. If I were to come down here and add count, I'd probably end up with like 6 million objects, right? Because it's literally a multi-category schedule scheduling everything. So then it's just a matter of going into the sorting and grouping and just, getting rid of itemize every instance. So it's only going to group everything it's scheduling, every door, beam, wall, whatever, inside of the one file name. So I've just done it this way. But, a lot of times I get into clients' files and they might have 13 links. Maybe there's one link. Maybe there's links that have no idea why people are linking things in. So just having some of these little QA schedules set up to go what's in there. Like I've done one for views that aren't on sheets. Some of these projects is, you just get into this and you hit zoom to fit your schedule. It looks like this because there's so many views not on sheets. So you might want to group, sort, whatever. Just kind of more getting into, for me, how many of these things do we have? You can see I do have a lot of these collapsed, so I'm just getting totals rather than listing every single view. So again, if I edited that schedule and I went into the sorting and grouping tab, in that sorting and grouping tab, I'm just grouping it by family and type. Therefore, I'm gonna not get every single view because I have unchecked itemize every instance. So just some QA schedules. It's not like it's a huge deal. It's a big deal, big thing to have. It's just something that I like to have on there. Like what kind of levels do we have in this project? This one, I had a client, the reason why I thought about this, we recently get into a project and somebody thought that when they were creating a level, it was like a spot elevation. So their project had like 55 levels in it. All of a sudden, they're like, wait, where did all these levels come from? And had they had this on here, they would have just started seeing this little, thing start to grow. But whoa, wait a second. Our newbie here doesn't understand levels versus spot elevations. So just some things to think about and consider when you're jumping in and starting off on a project.
Yeah, Sean mentioned in the chat that they put a sheet index that is filtered to show only revisions that have not been issued. It says it helps to not miss revised drawings.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of the same thing, you know, sheet index, that's a good one too. You got a little sheet index up here for only if the revisions are on there. That's a great thing. So cool. So I don't know if you guys have anything else. Again, feel free to join in the chat. Like I think it was Sean. Yeah, Sean said he adds a sheet index on here. So yeah, that's kind of why the thing for me is originally I had this start off as a drafting view way back in the day. I'm like, oh, but I can do the revision schedule. Oh, then I can start adding other schedules. And there used to be a crazy workaround where I'd put, because before we could schedule levels, you know, I had like a column in there, and I don't remember what I did, but I had ways to get this to schedule out too. Now we can just schedule levels, which is a cool thing. But cool. So I think seeing some questions jump in. So I had another thing to show, but I'll save that for the end in case we end up getting too many different questions in there. And I did the very last question does pertain to the schedule from Caitlin. So you want to read that one?
Yeah, sure. So Caitlin says, what things do you recommend using the building story of levels for, or what not to?
You know, honest truth, I really have only found one good reason for building story versus non-building story when we get into, I thought in my working, I had a section view here. So when you grab a level, you've got all these properties for it. Is it structural? Is it a building story? Is it not a building story? Obviously, we've got the name as associated as scope box. Honest truth for me, where I start using building story and not is for either creating filters to turn these on and off or color coding them. I'm currently working on a structural project with a client where we've got top of steel versus the actual finished floor level or the top of slab level. Architects call it finished floor, but it never is. They put their finishes on top. So I, created one called a building story, and then all the ones I've created that are 5, 6, 7 inches down for all the top of steel, I uncheck that, and then I can color code those. Plus that way, if I do have those, the architect could just create their own filter to say, oh, turn off anything that's not a building story, and it can turn it off. So really, there's not a whole lot of reasons why you use this, with the exception of, I'm gonna come up here to level 2 and I'm gonna uncheck building story. I don't remember if it's walls, but we're gonna find out here. If building story is unchecked, maybe it's for only view range, I forget, but you go to draw a wall, one of the things that you can start coming up here, and I forget what it is, it might be view ranges. When you're doing view range, or not view ranges, excuse me, underlays. When you're doing underlays, if you don't have, so range top level, I don't get level 2. So if you uncheck building story when using the underlay, it does not give you the option of that to be the top level. So I'm in level 1, my range top level is not there. If I come back to this, I believe, and grab level 2 and make it building story, and then go back into here and come up, I believe, and maybe I'm lying to you, look up. And there's something that building story actually triggers. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but one of the features you're in, if it's not checked as a building story, and it drove me crazy. I'm like, I have levels here. Why can't I choose it in this option? What's going on? It was that building story feature. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. It was pretty something I don't use often. I thought it was going to be this, but let's put a level 2 and see if do I not have a working level 2 view? I do not. Let me go create one real quick. Plan, use floor plan. Go into my working, we'll create a level 2, cool. And now let's try underlaying level 1. It is currently checked, so we'll see. Level 1, range top level is level 2, but let's go back into this and uncheck it. I really thought it was this, but I could be completely off. Unbound, let's make sure. No, sorry, I don't know, maybe it wasn't view range. Yeah, so not sure. Oh yeah, the reason I wasn't seeing level 2 is there was no plan view for it. You have to have a plan view for under, thank you, Simon. You do have to have a view for a level in order for that to show up, but there's another thing I don't remember. But so for me, the only reason I use building story literally is for filters. So hopefully that answers your question. I forgot who asked it.
Caitlin.
Thank you. I went to the bottom. We went to the bottom list, so I gotta.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Got another question here from Ryan. So I think Ryan had this all typed up and was ready to copy paste into the Q&A when we started, because he came in like right away with this really long question. So I'm going to do my best to read it here. It says, all my projects are commercial multifamily projects. Projects typically include 3 and 4 story buildings with 5 standard units, a clubhouse, garages, and trash compactor buildings, all in one file. Question, door headers. Create a special family, but you still have to match the architect's door location. Do you see this as a manual operation? How would you handle headers if you were a structural draftsman?
Okay, so that's the first
Got another question in here as well, but we'll hold that for.
Yeah, we'll hold that one. So honest truth for me, and I work with several structural firms who get into this, we create an opening family that puts in structural studs and headers. So we've nested into an opening family, the beam as well as the headers, et cetera. So when you put an opening in, you can actually, I believe it's a door for the one structural engineer I did it for. That way, if you wanted to, you could copy monitor the architect's door and swap it out for your door. And then you can say, hey, in this case, this door is getting 2 king studs, 2 trimmer studs, and this size header, whatever. So there's a considerable amount of work to get that family and create that family, but it is something that I have had structural engineers do. That way they can tag the door opening when they go through and set this up. But again, they're using copy monitor to get them in originally from the architect's file. That also means you have to have a wall there to host it into. I've seen somebody, and I can't remember if copy monitor worked, where they just created a non-hosted door family, and I think they could still copy monitor the architect's doors for theirs. Etc. But I'm not exactly sure if that was able to, I think you were able to use copy monitor, but I can't remember for sure. So yes, there are going to be hundreds of these in a type of project. But again, most of the time people are like, oh, these are all the corridor doors. We know that we're going to get this type of header, etc., this type of opening. Obviously, it depends on the load above, but usually it was a great way to get people started on that. So that's what I always recommend, because if you're going to go through and model a beam in, why not have something that also models the studs, your trimmers and your king studs and your trimmer studs? Why not? Because then we put it there and we can see the stud pack, and that can start to affect things like, oh, I've been in locations where it was like, oh, we had a very heavy load coming down on this, and there were 3 king studs and 3 trimmer studs, which is a huge deal for the light switches or anything else trying to get coordinated in there. So for me, it's kind of like, hey, it's cool. I liked it. Like I said, there was a tremendous amount of work to get that family set up for that client. They unfortunately would not let me keep it and share it for everybody, so I can't post it. I've also done one very similar with a general contractor who was the, hey, I want to go in and show this and do it. And their tag then tagged the rough opening that they frame it to, so then their guys on the site could do it. So they'd put these openings in, not only tag how many trimmer studs, king studs, et cetera, but they would then go in and tag everything in the one tag, so they could come in and say, oh, cool. It was not actually structural framing members because they didn't care. They didn't need it. But yeah, it was actually very cool when they got into it.
Nice. So Courtney mentioned that to Ryan, the person asking the question, said, I've done it for wood and LTGA box headers. And then Sean also said, I just did that so much easier for everyone to add the framing for that door.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, it takes some time, and I bet Courtney and Sean will agree. It wasn't like, a 2-hour family you went in and created. It took a lot of time, but otherwise, yeah, it's, if you're trying to go in and manual draw a header in every single opening in a multifamily, you're going to be hating life. It's going to be a lot of tedious work. So yeah, Sean, to get your fast family. Yes, definitely. It was to get the nests in and say, oh, I've got 1 here versus 2, 3, 4 trimmers, king studs, whatever. And as people did it, because you've got to do the array parameter and then a single version, since arrays can't have 1. You've got to have all that stuff inside of there. And then you still got to be able to choose out what type of header you're going to be putting in. But when it's done, yeah, it totally gets into the speed and process. And LTGA, Courtney keeps saying, I think you're talking light gauge. I would assume LTGA stands for that. Yeah, nested structural families and nested structural families do not play nice. It is kind of a pain in the butt. That's why it was much more fun for me to create the one for the contractor. He's like, I don't care if it's a generic model. I just need to be able to call out what's in there. I don't care if it's an actual structural framing member. So.
All right. Yeah. So the second half to his question, or the second question in his question, was floor trusses. Create a special family. Have to add extension lines that cross cut planes in order for them to appear in a view correctly. How might you imagine handling floor trusses if you were a structural draftsman?
So this is one that I get asked often, and I actually just did a presentation on this for, I'll go to my recents. I just did a presentation on this about sloped framing for Midwest U Speaker Spotlight, but this will bring out this great example of this too. So like a lot of times when I'm trying to bring in like, oh, I've got structural framing members coming into this wall or these beams or whatever, I'll have to come switch this, but I want to be able to show those symbolic lines going into the wall, out of the wall, whatever it's going to be. And I want those to truly get modeled there, right? So I'm going to go to the floor plan here, maybe my level 2, it's the second one down, it's this one. I am just going to go change the slope of this to be 0, so it's flat. Well, changing the slope to 0 is telling me what's going on. Fine, we'll go change the slope of this to be something really, really tiny, just so you can kind of see what's going on. And then I will edit this beam system, edit boundary, beam direction this way, finish. So when we start looking at this object here, I'm going to go back to 3D, look at this. It looks like I've got this going to the wall, but I don't. So this looks like this is all framing into the wall. It looks like it's going in. Make sure this is the right one. Yes. Maybe it's this one. I might be in the wrong one. So what I was going to go here is what I end up doing is it's this one. No, this one has it too. So what I'll end up doing in a scenario like this is you'll see these little orange dashed lines here. These orange dashed lines for me are what I call my reference column, or I do the same thing with a reference beam. And so when I come back down here, and I'm going to swap these out real quick, just so we get to the floor plan, you'll be able to see them. Sure, wide flange is great. So what I end up doing a lot of times, and this was all for sloping, but rather than taking this beam system and making this beam system go to the wall, I end up creating what I call a reference beam inside of here. So I'll go model a beam, structure tab, go to my beams. I don't care what the beam is for right now. You'll see I'm just going to go from this column to this column. And then when I do the beam system, the boundary isn't actually going to go to the wall. What I'm going to do is pick this support, right? I'm going to trim this up, trim this up. Now, go back into the boundary and tell it to reset, then finish this. I'm going to go back to a coarse level of detail here. So, right, we've got these symbolic lines here, but I don't want to see this one. So if I switch this to be my reference beam, right, I don't really see those lines, and I do have this on a subcategory. I do have filters, but now what's cool about that to get these lines graphically to show where I want, or heck, even three-dimensionally, right? If this was coming over the wall and sitting on top of the wall, I still would want this to move or whatever. Now, if I just take that beam and I move that beam, I can control where those symbolic lines are going to, right? That is not only controlling my symbolic lines, but it's truly going to be controlling what the 3D geometry is doing as well. So go back here to medium. So if this was one of those cases where, you know, this wall was going to be sitting down a foot or whatever, and I wanted to go through and see that, then yeah, I model my little reference beam. I have a subcategory. This must be attached. Let me detach all. Detach all. Now come in here and say my top offset is 1 feet. I don't know why it's not going down. -2 feet. There we go. Now I can start seeing that I can graphically show these where I want to be, and also I can model them in the right location. So for me, I do these reference beams quite often when I start getting inside of there. And again, they only display anything in a coarse level of detail. So I'm only ever going to see it in a coarse level of detail. So your architects are never going to see it because they're not in a coarse level of detail. They want to see your members. They don't have to worry about filtering it out. And then for you, I either have it on a subcategory or create a filter for it too. The other reason why I do this, and I was kind of talking about this in the last one, is if I come over here, you're going to see that I've got, I don't have it. So I must not have technically modeled it to the columns. My columns that tall, it's way above. It's way above my columns, level 2. Why is it so high? But at any rate, I will then use these to start doing slope framing too, because I can make this beam attached to these columns. And again, if these columns are non-associative. So the example I always show people, that's right, you can see I've got some reference beams over here, and these are not reference columns currently, but we'll go back and make those reference columns in a second. But I can select all those columns. I can attach those columns to something like a sloped floor or a sloped roof. Boom, they're all going to be attached. Everything's going to slope for the ride. right? Then I can go back and change these to be my reference column, go to my medium or fine level of detail. That's fine. And medium level of detail. And now you can see I did all my sloped framing. And the other cool part about reference beams and columns, if the columns are attached to the roof and the beams are attached to the columns or associated, as that roof pitch changes, so does all my framing. So I not only use it for what you were just asking, I'm getting those lines to display where I want to, or get them to show where I want, right? I got a K-series joist in here. I want it to go over the steel, or if it's a wood joist, I want it to go over the wall. This is a perfect example of that. So that's kind of what I do. Model a reference beam inside of here, a reference column inside of here, and then use those to control my geometry rather than the wall, etc. You just got to know they're there, especially if you're not in a course level of detail. Somebody's like, what's going on here? Screw it. I'm just going to edit the beam system and I'm going to take this line. I'm just going to move this line over because I want to adjust it. And they don't realize that it's actually associated to something and you're changing that sketch line's offset, right? So just as long as you make the team aware of it and everybody understands what's going on, otherwise, somebody will break it. So hopefully, Ryan, that answers your questions.
I think it did. He put in the chat, wow, reference beams and columns. Thank you.
Yep. I call them reference beams and columns. I have no idea. One of my other clients call it like invisible or holder or whatever. I just thought reference made sense since we have reference planes. I don't know. There's sometimes a reason for my madness. I just don't really know if it's a good reason.
All right. So we got another question from Rick. I'm trying to put a new door into an existing tapered wall. I keep getting an error. Cannot set angles on a tapered wall, which has angles controlled by the type. Any ideas?
No, because you've already got the tapered wall, and it's only when you're going in to place the door in the tapered wall. That's not going to be a structural wall, so we're going to be structural. I got to go create a tapered wall type. I don't have one. Sure, we'll use the 10-inch concrete. I don't even remember. It's been so long since I've done the taper. I am in 23, yes. Variable thickness, okay. And then we can come back in here and select this and say, where is the taper stuff? Crap. It's been a while since I played with the taper. I thought there was a property in here for like angle or topper. Then we had the variable thickness. I thought there was a property. Where's the property? Property called cross section.
Yes, there's a cross section.
Yeah, tapered. It was one of those. Then when I do that, I can get enable overrides. And then I can say 2 and 2. And then when you put it, yeah, I've not seen a problem with that. Have you tried, I guess my question would be, Rick, have you tried a different door? Is every door type you put in there, or is it like your door? Is there something with your door that's freaking out? Because I do know, and it wasn't tapered, but when it was slanted walls, there was something in my door family where I was doing the wall closure setting that actually would not let me put that door in a slanted wall. I thought they had fixed that because that was in the beta. But I would say try it with out of the box. Yeah, I'm not sure because I haven't seen it. There's got to be, probably you've hit the one weird freaky glitch angle and combination of things that, it's 1 in a million chance. Should have bought a lottery ticket. But yeah, not too sure. So I'd have to see the file in the door because I have not seen, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'm just saying I have not seen that problem. Sorry, Rick.
Hey, we never said all the answers would be perfect answers. We're just honest answers. So Robert asks, is there a way to export the CAD export settings so you can see the layer, color ID, layer modifiers, etc., what they are? I found the text file of them, but it is crap and doesn't show pertinent information.
There used to be, and they got rid of that in a release. So if I come up to File, really, I just clicked on File, Revit. There we go. Export. I come up to settings, options, export DWG DXF. There used to be an export button, and they got rid of it. So in this dialog box, there used to be an export where you could export this out. And And at one point in time, they got rid of it. And now it's an XML file that's buried somewhere. And I have to figure out where that XML file is. So I believe when you make these settings, it's actually going out because you can choose different like options, and you can load layers from a standards file. And that browses you to here. Well, no, it's actually showing the TXT, but there's not a way to export it anymore that I know of. Because it used to be an export button right down here. You came down, you're like, cool, let me go through here next, let me export this. So even if I create a new one, call it setup one, still no export. So yeah, I don't know anymore how to do that. I know for a while, one of the versions was you could import a TXT, or you could also set it up in an XML file, because I knew somebody was doing something with an XML file, but I have not seen the, hey, let me go export this to figure out where that's coming in from and what it's doing. Because yeah, you're right, the TXT file is kind of crap. And when they switched to the XML, if you can read XML, it was a little bit more meaningful, but I don't even remember how to export it to go verify what you wanted to do anyway. So, man, that's like 2 for 2. So I know there's a way. I do know, like I said, if you do come up here to the load standard layers from, and you do this, this is where it's looking for it. So it is going to be under just your RVT 20 whatever version file. And like I said, there is this TXT file, but yeah, like you said, it's all, oh, okay, here we go. It's a Buttman's approach, and it's kind of not the funnest thing to ever be looking at when you get into it. That's just export. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because this isn't even getting into the, oh man, this is even worse than it used to be. Yeah, they used to actually have the numbers and everything in it too. The formatting was horrible. But yeah, I haven't even looked at this one. So I don't know. I maybe do some searching for it out there, because I believe it switched to an XML file. I'm not 100% sure it still is, because that was back in like 2019 last time I dealt with that. So man, I'm like 0 for 2 there. Dang it.
Let's see if we can keep this up and go 0 for 3.
At least I helped Ryan. I mean, I'm feeling good. I helped Ryan a little bit.
Yeah, you did. All right. Jason asks, got a Revit question related to linked CAD. So I have this project where the existing building is in CAD. In the views, they are set to hidden line and the CAD file is masked as intended. But when we print to PDF, the view print as wireframe. Aaron suggested it was CAD file extents, but that wasn't an issue. Thoughts?
So it's like when you go to PDF, first off, I'm assuming, Jason, you printed to use multiple PDF printers, the out of the box, if you're in 23, PDF exporter, or like Qt PDF, not just Bluebeam or Adobe. Most of the time I find issues with printing to PDF. It's Bluebeam or Adobe. And I always, honest truth, there's a free one out there called Qt PDF. I use that one all the time and I have the most success with it. I got that from Brian. And when Brandon Haley and I used to work together, we had an IT guy who showed that one to me. And it's like, oh, that one works so great. But I'm assuming she's, yeah, you said you did do them all. I haven't seen the issue with the CAD file. Yeah, all of them. So I haven't seen an issue with that going on, but it does not surprise me. I've seen a lot of other crazy printing issues with CAD files being brought in. The one thing I would possibly suggest is how much are you cleaning up that CAD file? Are you cleaning up registered applications? I've seen those do weird things in Revit. Oftentimes, if you're not a CAD user, you type in -pu, and then you get an option for registered applications. I literally last week went into one and deleted over 68,000 registered applications out of the DWG file. Yeah, flatten purge, all that stuff is great, but overkill is always a good one. But the registered applications is one of the big ones I find that helps Revit, and I don't know why registered applications will do it.
Yeah, and the registered applications aren't in the normal purge command either. You have to do the -purge to get to it.
-pu, you have to do the command line version of purge. And then you'll get the option for registered, -pu.
Exactly, Jason.
So yeah, that's one I would try, but 90% of the time, it doesn't surprise me you're having issues with this CAD file being linked in. I mean, it's Revit, it doesn't play well with CAD stuff. I've had one CAD file where we found out that when this CAD file was linked in, every elevation in Revit that looked north, every wall was transparent. Wasn't set to be that way, just every wall was in wireframe. And it was like, okay, Every elevation, every section, anything we're doing there. Yeah, the only other thought I was going to say is what happens if you take that CAD file into a blank file? Are you going to get something else? Or what if you try removing the CAD file and bringing it back in? I know that completely sucks because all the settings, but sometimes just getting rid of the CAD file and bringing it back in, Revit's got to rethink about it. And I've seen that fix it as well. So not sure what the deal is, but yeah. So hopefully that makes sense for you.
I think my personal record for the registered applications was 400,000.
400,000?
Yeah, in one drawing.
Yeah. I knew I had over, I knew there was around 300,000 at one time, but consistently when I used to work in AutoCAD all the time, I would consistently get 70,000 from every civil engineer we ever got. I would consistently get 70,000 registered applications. And I don't understand how you get that many registered applications. Like if I get Civil 3D from most people, it's like, oh, there's 12 objects that got purged. Cool. But when you get that many, it's like, what are you adding on to your AutoCAD that makes 300,000 registered applications? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, we actually added it to our ACAD.list. So the list routine that opens up with every drawing to purge the reg apps.
Wow, that's
so
interesting.
It just automatically does it.
That's interesting. Yeah, and then the audit in CAD is always a good suggestion, which I don't know, every time I do audit in CAD, it never finds anything wrong. It's like, okay, but.
Yep. Okay, Ryan has a couple of questions here. Says, can you copy monitor groups? They do all these multifamily in groups sometimes. I just copy paste them into the model. Then he follows up with, sorry, no, you can't copy monitor groups, but how might you handle the groups as a draftsman?
So there's a lot of things people don't know about groups is you can actually export out a group and save it as an RVT. When you export a group out, it goes out as just a .rvt file, and then that group can be brought into other things. And I'm assuming that you're running into the same situation, Ryan, where you said multiple buildings doing the same things. So rather than even copy pasting groups, you can be in one project, right click, save the group. So if you come down to your groups in your project browser, you can, I don't have any, but let's just group this group, the best group ever, a single wall. Woo, wait, I just created an assembly, not a group. That was the wrong button. Dang it. Okay, let's grab this one. Woo, wrong button. Clicked one forward to the left. Great group. Cool, here we go, group one. Yay. But when you have a group down here, you can right click on a group and you can say, save this group. When you do that, it's actually going to save the group out as an RVT, right? It's just an RVT project. You can give it a name, let it keep the model name, give it a different name, whatever you want. You can even attach detail groups. So if you had like pre-made like tags in there, you can even have those tags go out to that RVT file. And then you can bring that in as a group, because a lot of people also don't know on the insert tab, you can actually say load as group. So you can load any RVT file as a group, and you can bring that into this project. So then if you update it in one project, all you've got to do is right click and save it out, go to the other project, right click and say reload, and it'll find where it was. So you can save them out, bring them in, and do it that way. So if you as a structural engineer saying, hey, we've got this thing here we got as a group, it's in 16 different buildings, that's always been my suggestion to go through and set that up. So that's one thing that I would always say, honest truth, as a structural engineer, I haven't found groups to be that damn useful. I know it sounds like something that should do. I mean, groups work really well for architects. They're non-existent for MEP. They just don't work in the MEP world. And structure, it's like, yeah, you can kind of do it, but when you're trying to do a group, do you leave, like, if this was a typical bay and you were grouping it, do you leave this one member unattached to this column and it's a group, and then you copy it over? So you've got two columns and a giant cantilever that you're just going to place groups next to each other. That might work, but then it's like, oh, I need to move something or adjust something. So honest truth for me, I haven't been that successful doing groups in the structural world, unless it's something like, oh, I've got this column and footing and I want them to be the same, and maybe I modeled rebar or something in there. Sure, cool, go to town, bring that in as a group. But for like entire bays, or in your case, you said multifamily earlier, I haven't really found it to be that useful. I mean, with doing beam systems, and as quick as beam systems are, and just attaching beams to columns, etc., there's so many other advantages I get by not grouping these things that I just haven't found a great reason in the structural world to use a ton of groups like this. Now, I don't know, Simon might be out there saying you're crazy, we use groups all the time, but I just haven't found them to be that successful. So for me, I don't use them a whole lot, but if you were trying to manage those groups from one in a multiple building project, that's how I would handle them. Yeah, Sean's like groups suck in structure. Yeah, I'm not a big group person. Like I said, I've created groups of typical framing for this, brought it in as a group, and then ungrouped it. So it was just like, man, I got tired of, K-series joists. I got tired of this unit we're using K-series joists. I'm going to drop this by 2.5 inches and put the beam system on top. I brought the groups in and then ungrouped them just to get one of them in there, and then I can copy it around. But yeah, just not a big group person in structure. I mean, groups are very, very finicky anyway. To start with any project, I mean, you have to set up all your content specifically to work with groups on the architecture side. Nothing can be face-based, nothing should be hosted, all these different rules. Can't really do stairs. You can do stairs, but not railings and groups, etc. Types of scenarios and things like that. So yeah, you can, but like I said, the amount of finessing I have to do with dealing with groups, I feel like I can do one floor, grab everything on that floor, copy to clipboard, paste to the new floor just as quick as I can deal with jacking around with groups. If something changes, I delete it, I copy it up, I re-tag it, and I don't do dimensioning on every single floor plan. And especially as things are changing, that's just been my workflow. Again, I'm not in the industry every day, so Courtney might be telling me, hey, this is stupid.
So Beth had a follow-up question on that. Are assemblies more useful?
Yeah. The problem with an assembly is you can create assemblies, and the whole reason this was part of the Autodesk back in, I think it was Revit 16, they were trying to come out with like Revit for contractors. And theoretically, an assembly can be used like a group, and it's great. Like I've used assemblies. I have one client using assemblies where we went in and instead of doing a group, we modeled all the rebar and the concrete column, how it tied into the footing, etc., and copied it around. The downside of assemblies is when it changed, I edited the assembly, changed the rebar, and said, oh, this changed from all the other assemblies. I must duplicate it. So it's not like a group where if you edit the assembly, it updates all the other assemblies. It tells you you've made a change. I must do a save as and create it as a new assembly. So or duplicate as a new assembly. So there is no, hey, update it once and get it to go through. Yes, you can then go back to the other one, select all instances, swap it out for the new one. That works to a point. But yeah, so assemblies are there, but not as powerful as a group for trying to get in and do something like that. The client I have doing assemblies is they literally are doing all these crazy, we wanted separate views just for foundations. So they're doing all their foundations as an assembly, copying around, and then they break out their views down here, and they also get into more fabrication. They don't do fabrication, they give out drawings for fabricators. So then they're like, here's what we're thinking of. So they use assemblies, they use them quite a bit, but they're also not in the building industry. They do other types of construction.
So Rick had a follow-up question. I think this is the tapered wall with the door opening. It says, I was trying to watch, but you're just so dang fast. Did you put that wall in the existing phase?
No, I don't even know what phases I have here. New construction, I can put it in the existing phase. Do you need me to put the existing phase? Is that why you're getting a warning on your opening? No, that's not the opening. That's not the opening. Oh, it's because I made the whole stupid thing in the assembly. Like, why am I tabbing so many times? Door. Well, I want the door new. Oh.
He said, yes, now try to add a door to that in new construction.
Interesting. So that's the existing so the door automatically goes on and, So I can replicate the issue. So just out of curiosity, we come in here and say, hey, let's go make this vertical, breaks everything, put a door in it with demo. Cool. I missed that part of your question. Sorry, Rick. Now let's go back and say tapered. I wonder if that's a known issue. I'm gonna have to Google that and see if that's a known issue. It might be. F1. I always forget, where is the known issues? Somewhere they always have like, hey, these are known issues, but I can never find them in the damn help file. Do you know where they are?
I don't know if they're in, I don't know if they put them in the help. I think it's the release notes.
It's in the release notes only?
Yeah, it's right there. It's Revit 2023 release notes. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, because I know like when they first come out with a thing and you're like, oh, here's the new feature. And it's like, oh, here are issues with it. Maybe I'm thinking of the beta. They only do that in the beta, but they say, hey, these are known issues. But I know not issues resolved. I don't want issues resolved. Yeah.
Well, there aren't any known issues because if they were known issues, they'd fix them.
Oh, sorry. The family I'm using is a door family, but it's got an opening into it, not a void.
I love what Benjamin said. Is the not knowing where the known issues list is a known issue?
That's pretty good, Ben. Well, this is known issues for work sharing one. I just want to freaking know. Oh, anyway, we'll look for that because this might be one of the known issues. I know when they originally came out with some of the stuff in the beta, it was like there was still a list of known issues. What if I just say slanted? So slanted doesn't do it. Angle 3. So slanted doesn't do it only when it's tapered. I can't imagine that they did not know that this is a known issue. I mean, everybody's going to be doing this, so I can't believe this isn't a known issue. But yeah, we'll have to do some more research on that, Rick. See if we can find it. But yes, not knowing where the known issues are is a known issue.
Yeah, Simon said try using void cut and see if that resolves it.
So what's really weird is when I did it first, I'm gonna undo about 1,000 times here. When I did it first, it converted the door to existing phase, which it does not do that on any other wall, right? If I put a door in this one and I convert, shoot, now this one's in a group. Let's do this one. That's what happens when you randomly grab stuff. So let's go switch this one to be existing. I hate this new IFC crap. I wish they would have like dropped it all the way to the bottom of the list. Some of my stuff, it's like not there. All right. So boom, boom. And then, yeah. So I don't know. We'll have to look into it. No, the wall is not curved. This wall just happens to be straight. And then Simon said try throwing in just a wall void, but I'm sure Rick is trying to probably put like a door or something in there. Architectural openings, wall opening, new construction. I gotta change this to be tapered first. Have it yell at me. Yeah, you'd have to switch your openings to be existing as well. Although last time I did it, it switched it automatically for me. That's so bizarre. Oh, what? Well, now I'm just confused. So it seems like a bigger problem, Rick. I'd definitely look into that one. Maybe we can find it might already be a known issue and then submit that to Autodesk. Absolutely. So what else we got there?
Oh yeah. Do you want Ryan says, okay, this guy is amazing. Can I hire him to look at my models basically something like 2 hours a week for like a few weeks?
Absolutely.
That's plug yourself.
I mean, we don't usually sell things on here, but I'm not going to say no to money. Somebody asking me that. Yeah. But yeah, Ryan, just look me up. You can Google the Revit Geek. You'll get my email. You'll get my website. Absolutely. It's what I do.
What's your website?
My website is bdmackeyconsulting.com. I will put it in the chat. Well, you're getting the Revit Radio link, but there you go. You can browse through it. Wait, that's all. I thought there were more questions. Were all they like follow-up questions?
Yeah, they're all just little follow-up things.
Cool. Well, we got 10 minutes left.
Yeah, does anybody, there are no more questions. So if anybody has any questions, now would be a great time to ask them because you're pretty guaranteed to get it answered.
Yeah, it might not be, I was 0 for 2 at the beginning, so we're not. The one thing I was actually going to talk about on this, getting into here and starting to look at this, is for me, this is my profile family. And when I go to my profile family, you're going to see that there's all these little check boxes for insertion, top, bottom, left, right. And so right now, if you look at this thing, right, and I'm gonna drag this kind of like right to the middle of, I'm gonna drag my little display box here and put it basically right at the center of that reference point, that circle, right, or the rectangle. So I've built into my families the capability to move the insertion point on where it's going to be. And the only reason I start showing this is it came up at a client the other day and they were just duplicating the rectangle family. And there were like 9 versions of it because I needed one insertion at the top right, one at the top left, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I've basically done is added reference planes in here with an offset. And of course, after I did this, Desiree came in and said, well, why are you doing it that way? It'd be much, much easier just to move the insertion point around. It's like, yeah, all right, you're right. But I've been doing this for 2 years. I have too many families based off of this. So shut up. I didn't say that, right? But Desiree, yeah, hers is way better than mine. But what
you would not be alive to tell that story if you said
that's true. This is true. I didn't think you were listening. Dang it. So for me, I just draw a reference plane way the heck out in space. And then I padlock that from the physical insertion point. And then I basically just do formulas. You'll see I've even got an option in here to move it off to the side, left or right, whatever. So basically, this is the actual insertion point. I draw a reference plane over here. I make sure that reference plane is not a reference. And then I just do a formula that basically says, if it's left, move it a positive half the width. If it's right, move it a negative half the width. So that way I can start going through and just shifting this from left to right to top to bottom. Then over the years, I realized it's also nice to have an offset in here. So basically you'll see that all it is down here is if I look at this little formula, it's saying, hey, if it's insertion left, it's that 24 inches minus the width divided by 2. If it's insertion right, minus the offset. If it's insertion right, it's 24 inches plus width divided by 2. Otherwise, it's 0. Right, or 0 plus the offset. So just kind of, or 24 plus the offset. So just kind of the scenario of being able to do this offset. And the other nice part about this too is I can make that offset value a negative, because since it's being part of a formula, it's just going to be adding or subtracting that. It's going to be adding a positive or a negative number to this. So it's just something that I bring up because I go into a lot of clients' offices in the project. There's like 9 different rectangular families inside of there. And literally the reason is because I need one that I want to insert from the top left, or worst off, I don't see but one in there, and people are playing with all these weird offset values when they're creating the profiles, the sweeps, whatever. For me, it's just much easier to control that in the profile and go through and have that offset and shifted. And if I actually go look at those, you'll see that I have a ton of those in my Revit families. Like every single one of my families, for the most part, profile families has that option. If I come look here, like this U channel, I can do the same thing. The metal eye, it's got the same thing going through here. So any one of these, maybe not some of these trim ones. I created these quite a few years ago and I haven't updated them, but the majority of these I have are going to be, hey, yeah, I want to go through and have this be able to be offset and moved. So I used to create like rectangle TL, rectangle TR, that'll be top left, top right kind of scenario as we went through. The difference of what Desiree did is she just modeled this in place where it was, and then she just has a formula that says moves this around from the center point. So this is the insertion point, and rather than moving the whole damn profile, she literally just moves the insertion point to the left side to the right side. So kind of how she starts getting into that is rather than, hey, let me do this and move the profile, she just moved the insertion point, which does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Right, we got a couple more questions that popped up.
Cool.
First, from Caitlin, will you be at AU?
Not sure yet. I am not speaking. None of my 10 sessions got accepted. Still haven't decided if I'm going to go to it or not. If I do, I'll probably be spending most of my time down the exhibit hall as I'm trying to get a free pass from one of the exhibitors down there. But no sessions got accepted, so I will not be speaking. I'm not sure if I'm going to go there yet.
All right. And then Ryan asks, in your experience, are most structural engineers still doing the details in CAD?
No. A lot of them will, try to be bringing across their CAD details, but Sean Spence, heck no. Ryan, if you Google me and then detailing, and it's actually up on AU 2 or 3 times. I've spoken at most time, and you'll see my example of detailing in Revit. I will actually open it real quick because we have 9 minutes left. I just got to remember where this is. This is going to be in here. So no, my theory and the reason why I don't do that is that's not where I wanted. The details are more than just lines, right? So the example I always say, and so many people get tied is, and structural engineers don't fall into this as much as architects do. But when I put a component down, I don't want somebody calling that component something different. I don't want somebody going in saying, hey, this is a number 5 rebar versus a pound space 5 versus 5 pound or whatever, and labeling that rebar 15 different ways. Not as bad for structural engineers as it is for architects. You'd be amazed how many times you can find gypsum board spelt in an entire project. But so for me, like when I start looking at this, you can start to see these are all Revit native components, and even something like this. If I come in and grab this rebar, like, oh, I didn't want 3 down here, I wanted 5. If I change the value here, the tag updates. I got 5 number 5s, right? Even this one here to the side, you don't really see it, but this is holding the information of what is the spacing on here. So you'll see if I come down here, I've got this saying, hey, it's a number 5 at 18 inches on center. Well, I can come down here and find my spacing. Where's my spacing value? How did it get moved all the way down here? I hate Revit. Let's just say I want to do that at 2 feet, change that to be 2 feet, and you'll see this will change here. So this is data that's changing, but not only graphically, it's changing the tag. Same thing like this one, there's a checkbox for alternating bars. If I turn the alternating bar off, the text for alternating bar goes away. So you can build in so much intelligence to the Revit detail items that anybody doing details with still lines, or even trying to do these in CAD, very few people are using smart AEC blocks in CAD to do details. I just don't understand it. Because again, now it's just tagging all of this information and getting it set up. Yeah, I did also do the details at Revit Pure too. So like I said, you guys are starting out from CAD. You're going to be bringing in some CAD details and using those in your first few projects, because you can't stop and do everything else to just do details. But it's always, like I say, is you bring a detail in, like, oh man, I need to tweak this. That's when you should take that typical detail and start using all Revit components. Oh, this detail needed a change. I'm going to go now change it, but I'm going to change it via convert it by doing real live Revit components, not just exploding it and changing the lines.
Awesome. Courtney had a question that she put in the chat. I have a question about nested structural framing families. I know you can't nest them as structural framing families. The connections won't work right. They have to be recreated as generic models. Is there a way to nest parameters into the host family from the nested family? It's reversed from traditional family parameter nesting.
Unfortunately, no, and it's one of those things that really drives me crazy. I mean, I can have the parent family push data into the original family, like, oh, gee, if I had this in here, I could set it up. But you're right. If you don't have it as a structural framing family and you have it designed, do I have structural? I had that one. Where'd it go? Yay! If your structural framing families aren't the ACES out of the box structural framing families, the connections won't even work. You need to, if you're using out of the box families, they have to be the shapes. And the reason for that is the ACES ones use this value here called section shape. This value here is what comes in and pushes all the data for the connections to use. Theoretically, this is what's also supposed to be tagging in with the structural analysis. When you export out of other programs, this is the data they're looking for. And when you change it to this section shape, what that does is it does give you all of these structural analysis pieces here. Now, can I, in a generic model, let's see, if I just convert this to generic model, let's see what happens. Do those stay? So now in a generic model, do those parameters all stay? They all stay. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I haven't tried that. Because all those parameters will stay, and it's still going to say it's a structural module, because that's kind of one of the big things. This becomes a structural module. So if you're going to create your own new parameter and you change the discipline to structural, then down here you have to find structural modules. You might be able to get the names the same. I don't know if those are like system shared type values or not. I don't know. My question would be, take your structural, save it as a generic, and then see if this works. It's still not going to work with the connections, but hopefully it'll start to understand that, oh, gee, maybe these things are starting to come in. With that said, you can get structural framing members to nest. You just can't use the structural framing beam, the complex beam, or the simple whatever it is. So like when we go to the floor plan here, you can't use the one that's line based where you pick a point and a point and it's this version. You can, when starting a new family, choose the structural framing. English, I don't know if I've loaded them in 23. Structural frame. You got this one, which is the beams and braces, and then there's complex and trusses. You can start creating them in here, and Revit will understand it's a structural framing member. Also, length is then not nested. It's not, I haven't tried it with the structural connections after that, but I have done this in the past trying to get, I need to get this beam as the first question came up into my header schedule. It's still going to see that as a beam because when I go start that family, I should have started it from there. I'm still going to say it's structural framing. English Imperial, structural framing, complex and trusses. Okay. Open up the family. It's still going to understand here, this is structural framing, right? I'm still going to have what is the, you don't get, the section shape. So if I were to go change this to that I shape, right? It's still then going to go add all of those module families for me. The only thing that's going to be different than here is you can come in and determine a length parameter for nesting purposes. So you can try that. I don't know if that's going to work with structural connections. So you might want to, if you try that, you might want to go, throw a rectangular sweep in here real quick, see what it does, and see if you can do it with that. You should still be able to do this in Revit 19. All this came out, my God, I don't remember when the ACES shapes came out and all the structural connections. And the structural connections are huge in the newer versions. They sucked in 19, but the structural, all of this stuff should still be there. Cool. I think that was everything.
Yeah, I think so.
2 minutes before the top of the hour. We never get done with Revit Radio on time. And by we, it was nice to see so many structural questions today. I always like it when I get those structural questions. On that note, I think we're going to go ahead and call it a day.
I think so.
I did start recording this one at the beginning. I do have a YouTube channel. I think I've had 20 whopping views on one of my Revit Radio sessions. But as Sean said, if I went too dang fast for you and you wanted to go back and listen to me drone on for yet another hour or repeat me droning on for another hour, I will get those posted. Hopefully, I don't think I got last month's posted. I'll have to go back and check. But I do try to get those posted. There's not really a high demand, so it's not like I remember all the time. So, but we'll try to get those on there. And again, tell your friends, tell your family members, they might be entertained, or tell your coworkers, tell your competition. I always say, the more all of us know, the better our industry becomes. So I always love to say, let's get into this and let's start sharing the wealth, because anything that we do, we all gain knowledge, the better our industry becomes. So hopefully that works there, and hopefully I will see everyone next time. And yes, Rick, I would suggest, first I would see if you can see if it's a known issue, but I would suggest putting a support ticket in with Autodesk saying, hey, FYI, this is what's going on. A lot of times you do it, they'll come back and say, yeah, known bug. And you're like, cool, where are the known issues? Then you can let me know next time. All right, thanks everyone, and hopefully we'll see you next month.